Are you a hair professional that finds creating silvers and greys challenging? Or maybe you colour your own hair at home and would love to enhance your natural grey? Well, this is the video for you. Stay tuned as we get into everything silver and grey. Hello and welcome to the world of Craig. Yes, that's me, I'm Craig, and this is my channel where we get into all things hair and sometimes a little bit of beauty. You've already met Star on the thumbnail and in the intro. Beautiful silver grey, and that's exactly what this video is about. Recently, I put together, got my prop here, hello. Recently, I put together a webinar for Redken. These are Shades EQ Gloss Silver Grey formulas, and I shared it with people online, and I thought, why don't I bring some of it to you, like a little nugget of all the top tips, really, that were in the webinar to you. So that's exactly what we're going to do, excuse me, in this video. We're going to look at the full process now of me applying, there's two different formulas on Star's head, one on one side and one on the other, split down the middle if you like, using the T's and the P series, which in my opinion give you a true silver grey result, and I think you would agree. There are multiple formulas on each bit of the hair, which you will find out in a second in the full process. And then once we've had that with all the formulas for you to screenshot, for you to use at a later date, I'm going to come back and we're going to go through some top tips for creating silver greys on global bleaching and how to enhance naturally grey hair. But without further ado, that was a very long, and also of course, if you enjoy this video and find it helpful, you know exactly what to do. But without further ado, let's get into the gorgeous Star's full process, silver, grey, everything. Let's start off by having a look at our starting point and our canvas. You can see here that Star's hair is around a level 9, 9.5, and there is some gold in the hair, but that's fine. We will formulate accordingly. Late night Craig in the salon on his own being silly. Now I'm using Shades EQ Gloss here for this silver grey result, but this video is non-brand specific. More on that later on in the video. On the left-hand side, I'm using 3 formulas created with the P series from Shades EQ Gloss, and on the right-hand side, I'm using 3 formulas created with the T's. Please feel free to screenshot these for your reference at a later date. And if you'd like a more in-depth, step-by-step look at how I apply what I call a zone tone, there are many root shadowing videos here on my channel. So that's the deepest formula on, and then I go through with my mid formula and my end formula. Yes, when you're making a silver grey, sometimes they can look very scary and very deep whilst they're processing, but don't worry, we will get into all of that later on in the video. Taking a quick look at the cloth I wipe my hand on in between applying each formula, you can definitely see a grey tone in there. And remembering that the cooler a shade is, the deeper and darker it will look whilst it's processing. Tricky to hold a dolly when you're on your own in the salon, but look at that tone. We had 20 minutes processing. That's the guidelines for Shades EQ Gloss. And it really is the most beautiful example of 2 silver grey formulas. And then you get to see them dry. Oh yes, there are a few surprises in those formulas. That aqua blue on the ends here, which is just really divine. Now, let's go back to me to get right into all the do's, don'ts and top tips of creating silver grey. So wow, how much do we love silver grey hair? And as you saw in that full process, we had the P's on the left-hand side and the T's on the right-hand side. Now, obviously I've used Shades EQ Gloss for those colours, for Star's gorgeous formulas, big up to Star. But this video is going to be a general non-brand specific. I will just mention for the Shades EQ Gloss users out there, we're going to talk about toning bleach outs using demi-permanent colours and also adding, enhancing naturally grey hair using demi-permanent colours in this video. That's very specific, but this video is not brand specific. There are tips and pointers regardless of whatever brand you use. But for those of you that do love Shades EQ, I just want to get into this video that in my opinion, as I probably mentioned in the full process, but editing them at different times, the T's and the P's, because of the backgrounds of those colours, they have black to grey backgrounds, okay? And they have a mixture of blue. The P's are a mixture of blue and violet, and the T's are a mixture of blue and silver. They basically will create, as you can see, on the right sort of canvas, which we'll get into in a second, put your teeth in, Craig. They will create pure, true silver greys, okay? In my opinion, the T's and the P's, I don't use them to cancel out warmth. I use other things from the series, but that's an entirely different video. So let's get into enhancing natural grey hair and creating these kind of looks on a global bleach out. Love it. Very briefly, before we get into all of that, I apologise if you can hear the geese outside. I live by the canal and the geese are going crackers today. I don't know why, it's very grey here in London, obviously fitting for this video. But also, I just want to briefly mention that those two things we are going to be talking about. I get a lot of questions about people that are growing out their permanent hair colour, and can I give them a formula to create a grey look when they've got grey, regrowth, and they've still got dense, opaque, pigmented tint on the mid-lengths and ends. Can I give them a formula, or can I tell them how to create a grey look on that, like you do see all over the socials, okay? That's a whole different video, and I did talk about it in the webinar that I did for Redkin. Big up to Redkin for asking me along to do that. But it's a whole different process, and you need to remove the tint with lightener or colour remover first, then lightener, and then you need to recolor the hair. So it's a whole different thing, which I could do a video on if I could find the right model, which could be tricky, but I could do a video on that if you really wanted me to. But now I'm just waffling. But specifically, if you want to create a grey look on someone with permanent colour, they either need to grow the colour out or you need to remove it first, in whichever method you would choose. Okay, right, on to silver greys, enhancing grey, global bleach outs. Now let's start at the thing that might have brought you to this video, which is enhancing naturally grey hair. I've had lots of DMs and lots of comments about that particular topic. Now, regardless of whatever brand you are using to formulate your hair colour with, to enhance your natural grey, and I can't talk about things that are from the drugstore, I'm afraid, because I haven't used any of them. I would say that if you do want to enhance your natural grey minimally, there's a lot of fantastic coloured conditioners, coloured shampoos. You can get like grey, properly grey toned coloured shampoos and coloured conditioners. All of those things out there are really great products, and they are something that should really be considered because they are a lot more temporary. Number one, I would say, if you're enhancing your natural grey hair using a demi-permanent colour, is please be aware that if you use any sort of product where there's an exchange of energy, demi-permanent colours are two parts. You normally mix a cream or a gel, as it is with Shades EQ Gloss, a liquid with a developer. If there's an exchange of energy, then there is a possibility on your gorgeous grey hair, which at the end of the day contains no pigment. If you use a demi-permanent colour, it could possibly stain your hair. Because another question I get a lot is, I'm going to use a demi-permanent colour to tone my grey. Will it all fade completely? Well, I don't know. It might do, it might not. So if you're in any doubt and you want to go back entirely to your natural, please don't colour your grey hair. Keep it as it is. Use colour enhancing shampoos, use colouring enhancing conditioners, but even with those, go steady. Now, let's have a look. Let me put on screen what you've seen on here before. If you've watched some of my other videos here on my channel, yes, editing later. Let's put this on screen, which is the level chart. Now, bearing in mind the natural level, so bearing in mind that grey hair has no pigment effectively inside it, so it's translucent, we're going to class it as being very light, so as a level 10. Obviously, on this chart, the level 10 looks slightly yellow. Grey hair does sometimes have some yellow, which we'll get into in a second, but often, it's very translucent, depending on the type of grey hair, because all grey hair is different. Hallelujah, we're all different. How amazing. Now, in my opinion, if you want to enhance your natural grey using a demi-permanent colour or your client's natural grey, you need to formulate your demi-permanent colour, toner, gloss to be very light. So what that means is if grey, for example, sits at a level 10, then you want to formulate your demi-permanent colour, your formula to be at a level 11 or a level 12. All you really want, unless somebody wants to be steely, deeper grey, but if you're enhancing the grey and you're not really changing the colour, you following me? Yeah, yes? Then you need to formulate it to be light. So I would say on a level 12, really, on a level 11 or 12. So if I give you an example with Shades Hue Gloss, and this applies to all the brands, I've used other brands to enhance grey, Pravana, I've used a bit of Schwarzkopf, I've used Colour Touch, and I would always formulate on a level 11 or 12 because you don't want to add any depth. You just want that zingy, bright, gorgeous grey, silver, which is, I'm looking at Star over there. So for example, with Shades Hue Gloss, I might use some 9V, I would use some 9T, I would use some 9P, maybe a third of all of those. So one part, one part, one part, and then I would use 3 parts of clear. So the clear in Shades Hue Gloss, and most semi-permanent colours do have a clear that you can dilute things with, and if they don't, then you could apply to damp hair to dilute the product very slightly and keep your eye on it, depending on what brand you're using. Always follow manufacturer's guidelines. So my top tip for making grey hair zingy, and remembering that some grey hair can have some yellow, so that's where your violet inserts colour wheel here. Violet is the opposite, obviously, of yellow, so that would help to neutralise the yellow. But remember, there is a possibility that it might stain the grey hair, more permanently, if you like. It might leave a cast, a stain behind. And in my opinion, the best enhancing natural grey, lost my train of thought there, enhancing natural grey formulas are a mixture of different tones. So you could use some silver, you could use a bit of violet, you could use a bit of pearl, which has an iridescent tone on it, which is gorgeous on naturally grey hair. Again, always follow manufacturer's guidelines. I wouldn't process them for longer than the manufacturer's guidelines say. I wouldn't add heat if they say not to add heat. If they do say to add heat, then obviously you can, but that's going to push your product further into the hair. But those, in a nutshell, are my top tips for enhancing your natural grey using demi-permanent colours. And obviously, if you want to make your grey deeper, then you could use that level chart and decide what kind of level, if you eyeball on there, what kind of level you want it to be. But for example, on what you just, hold on, I'm coming back, don't go anywhere. I'm back, I had to grab Star. If you look at the example on Star's roots here, this was a much deeper formula using Shades Hue Gloss. So I think on the T side, I think it was a level 6 if I remember correctly, editing at different times, was a level 6T. So you can see that's much deeper and it has much more of a steely effect. If you wanted that, then that's what you would formulate to. Remembering, as I've said many times throughout this clip, that if you formulate at a deeper level, it will put more pigment into the hair and there is more possibility that it will leave behind, pigment in the hair. And if you don't want that, I wouldn't use a demi-permanent colour on your grey hair at all. Okay, moving on. So that brings us to creating silvers and greys on global bleach outs. Now, all of the other, everything I've already talked about applies to creating silvers and greys. When it comes to, the makeup of your formula, I would always say that the best formulas for silvers and greys are a mixture of things. And remembering that if you globally lighten someone's hair, so Stars, I didn't globally lighten Star. Star came to me as a level 9.5, inserts picture here. So they were very yellow, sort of not fluffy chick yellow, but they were very, very yellow. It's worth remembering that in my opinion, okay, and this is my opinion, but it is one I feel very strongly about, silvers and greys on global bleach outs must go on very clean canvases. If you want them to have this gorgeous iridescent, very zingy result. I say zingy all the time. It's a word that a client came up with and I think it really does sum it up. If you want that translucency, then it needs to be a very light, clean canvas. If there is orange in the hair, the result will be muddy and it will not look like this. And obviously, this is my top tip, if you like, for creating beautiful silvers and greys on global bleach outs. If you're using something that is silver, regardless of the brand, it will probably have blue and it will almost certainly have silver grey in it. Then add some violet to your formulas, as I did in the full process of Gorgeous Stars when I was using the teas. Add some violet into your formula and that will counteract any yellow. You could shampoo the Global Bleach out with a violet shampoo to kind of do a pre-tone. I don't really like to pre-tone, to be honest, because I tend to find it interferes with the final result too much. If you remove too much of the yellow to start off with, and then you apply your global, your formula to tone or to gloss and to deposit pigment with a demi-permanent colour, you could find your result is quite dull, whereas I love that translucency. So that's my top tip really for global bleaching, is make sure that your canvas is very clean. Obviously the hair's integrity always comes into play. There are loads and loads of global bleaching videos here on my channel. Oh yes, there are. And they're all in a playlist, so everything on here is everything on here is in a playlist, so it's easy to find. But my number one tip, if you want to create a result like this on a global bleach out, then I would make sure your canvas is very clean. And also another top tip, a quick bonus tip. I always like to, not always, but often, I like to ground my global bleach outs if they're going to be silver or grey or icy. I like to ground them a little bit by putting in a root shadow. So I make the root slightly deeper with whatever product I'm using, and then I will apply a slightly lighter formula and then lighter still on the mid-lengths and ends, as I did in Star's process. Marvellous. That's it for this week and our silver grey extravaganza. If you'd like to see what I get up to with hair day today, then you can check that out over on my Instagram, as well as obviously all the shorts that are on here. And I am on TikTok, which is the same as my Instagram. And just a heads up, my Instagram and my TikTok are not the same name as my channel. They are the one that's on the screen now, Craig's World of Hair. That's it. A huge thank you if you've got to the end, and a huge thank you for watching this. What was your biggest, don't point at the screen, Craig, what was your biggest takeaway from this video when it comes to creating silvers and greys on global bleaching or enhancing natural grey? You all take lots of care, and I'll see you all in the next one.